Welcome to the first part of my video series about high security lockpicking. This part will be a bit more basic, but it's a very important part. It's about tension. The first thing is the amount of tension. I think by now you should be comfortable with how much tension you use. So a short overview of this is you can use as heavy tension as you want while you're looking for a binder. As soon as you have found a binder, you can try to push him down and just get lighter on your tension until you get the pin set. If the pin is set, you're fine. You have then a certain amount of tension. You shouldn't undergo or go lighter than this, because then you might lose pins. But that's usually very light tension, and you will lose pins maybe if you set others, but you can't really overcome this by heavier tension without bending your picks. So you should feel comfortable with this. Another thing is, if you're in a false set, then you don't have to apply tension at all as long as the core stays in this position. You can get your tension as light as the core doesn't turn. So then you can just look for counter rotation with very light pick force. So another thing is, on high security lockpicking, it's more about what picks you use. Usually you might until now still have used bottom of the keyway. That's not so precise since you're off the rotation axis, and maybe you even scrap on the core, on the Bible. So I mean, maybe not a shiny lock, maybe this one. So I mean, if you're in here, you're pretty much in the center of the rotation axis. If you're offset, you're actually rotating still around this point, but your tensioner sits here. Also, you can scratch on the Bible here and get the feedback eaten away by this friction. So as often as you can, try to use these top of the keyway ranges. Sometimes you have some design features which force you to use something different. On dimple locks, it's a different story anyways. So there it's the best thing if you use special dimple tensioners which are pretty long and allow you to get your pick. Here we have one to slide along this part of the tension tool. So because if you're just with your pick very free, you can slip to the left, to the right, and here you have kind of a guide. That's a very important thing on dimple locks. In general, you always have to watch that you don't block your way of picking, like on tight keyways like this. I think I will link some very important or very good videos in the description, so you can re-see some of these if you think you should go over a topic again. The next thing is, sometimes you can use some tricks, like on this lock, where we have this edge here. I can just put a dimple tensioner right here and use this as a pretty perfect fitting tension tool. Maybe there are some thicker ones which might fit better, but I think this is already, yeah, you can see it sticks there, it has no flop, and I have good control over the core. So that's actually a good tension tool to pick this lock, for example. So why is it so important that our tension tool is fitting correctly? That's because we have now tight tolerances, and often the feedback is very subtle. So if I use some tension wrench on this lock, for example, it's not high security, but it's a good example. I have some flop here or somewhere else. And whenever I get counter rotation, on this one, I have to release the tension completely and then go back at it, or I lose more pins. So now it would be the superior method to just insert a tension tool that fits tight like this. So I do not have any flop at all on the connection of the tension tool with the core. So now I could actually just set a spool by pushing like here, or so by pushing like this and slowly rotating back. And so I can set all my spools without problems and losing more pins than I have to. So that's one very important thing, that your shape of the tool is the tightest connection between the tensioning tool and the core. It also should be a comfortable fit, because usually on these locks you have to pick a little longer than on easier locks. So there are also some kind of nasty problems you can face. For example, on this 3KS, that's a design feature. You have right there, if I can focus on it, you have right there, there's a hole, and there's a part of the sidebar protruding the keyway. It's really sticking into the keyway and preventing the sidebar to bind on the sliders when you have your tension wrench just there. So for example, if you just put it in here like this, you will not get any binding on the right side, because your tension wrench is pushing the sidebar back out, and you just can't get any tension in the lock really. So you have to use this one, for example, because it has a hole in the middle. You still have enough room to operate, and you won't disturb the sidebar from entering the keyway. So that's one design example why you have to know what's in the lock, and also what it does. Here's another one. This one also needs this tension wrench instead of anything else, because, for example, here, this one would split the core. Maybe if you can look really closely, it's actually splitting the core apart. So the core has no connection here. It's actually two sides of the core which are not connected. And by this, you just jam it into the Bible and nothing will rotate. So if you use this one, you can just apply tension without splitting the core too much that it will not rotate anymore. So that's another important thing, that you know what tensioner you can actually use, because sometimes there are restrictions by the design of the lock. Another thing is very important part, and I already kind of talked about it. It's floating tension or floating core tensioning. That means I have very precise connection to the core, and I'm manually rotating back. So I'm kind of in a state between the pins springing back and the actual pin binding. That's a very important thing on, for example, EVA sliders. I will cover this in a later video. But it's also a thing on something you might know. On this, these are ASA pins. This is, for example, a Christmas tree. So at this point, thank you, Suspes, for this lock. It's really great and a great example at this moment. So here we have one of these Christmas trees. I'll go to manual focus. Okay. So we have also some edges in the Bible. I'll show them here. And these are called undercuts. That's a very special thing to ASA. And I think here you can see it great. So and that's something that looks like I've drawn here. Let me see if I can. No, normally I had here. So here, that's the problem. On a normal spool, I would have it turned like this, and if I push it down, I get counter rotation, because this edge here is hitting this part of the Bible and wants to rotate it upright again so it can slide in. If I have this undercuts here, the upper part of the spool can actually enter here, and I do not get any counter rotation at all. At this point, I have to turn the core so it can't move any further, and then rotate it just a tiny bit back, so I have no binding here. Then I have actually a tiny bit of flop here, and then I can feel, okay, here is a spool which is not set correctly. So then I go on the spool, rotate the core manually back until there's enough space for it to enter into the Bible, and then quickly rotate the core back. That's a very, very important thing you should train. And also, yeah, maybe I can show it here again. So that's That's about the flop I have. And there I can feel how that I have to set it. Then I rotate the core back just a tiny bit until it comes out and quickly rotate it back again. That's a very difficult thing to learn if you haven't done it before. But there's, besides from just picking locks like this, you can train it. You just take yourself any standard pin tumbler lock you have, can have security pins or not, and you just try to pick it or partially pick it, and then you release tension with a tight-fitting tension wrench to a point where you can hear the pin springing back. But you want to just let one pin at a time spring back, or maybe you can just let one pin spring back, then increase the tension again and just try to let one pin go after another. So that's a great exercise. It's actually pretty difficult, at least in some locks, to get a feeling for the manual core rotation. That was the first part. I hope you liked it, and I would like if you give me some feedback, if it's okay, if it's too long, if the video quality is good. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.